dictionary definition of music is the art of arranging sounds in time through the elements of melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre. Low Pass Filter is a show about the nature of this thing we call music, how it functions in people's lives, how it's contextualized by society, and why we find certain music meaningful. This is Low Pass Filter. Hello and welcome to Low Pass Filter. This is a show where we talk about music and what it means in our lives. And as usual, I'm joined by Bandon Wayne.
Hello.
Welcome,
Good
Bandon.
morning.
I'm Mateo Noche, at least, on any given third Thursday of the month.
For certain intents and purposes.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. And as we do each month, we go back and forth on topics. Last month it was Bandon's topic. This month it's my topic. And the topic that I chose was outsider music.
Always trying to challenge your co-host here. Outsider. We both have some affection for outsider musicians.
Totally, yeah.
We may not always enjoy every kind of far out, questionably outside the box musician, but we respect it.
Well, sometimes I feel like a little bit like an outsider musician myself, so, way outside.
Fair point. Yeah.
Like about 3,000 miles outside. But, yeah, we're neither here nor there. That's not important. What is important is, as we do usually, is defining terms. And so let's do that right now. Outsider music is created by self-taught or naive musicians, at least that's what it says here on my piece of paper. The term is usually applied to musicians who have little or no traditional musical experience, sometimes exhibit childlike qualities in their music, or who have intellectual disabilities or mental illness. They can be called unintentional renegades.
Interesting. Yeah.
They didn't want to be a renegade, but they ended up being one anyway. They don't have an overt self-consciousness about their art. It just comes out.
Yeah.
Folk artists, maybe. I don't know. Is that a good term? Their music might be melodically adrift, or the rhythms might stumble a little bit, and they also might seem harmonically without an anchor. Their instrumental proficiency may come across as laughably incompetent, and sometimes they lack self-awareness. I think we already said that. They don't break the rules just to break the rules. They break the rules because they don't know there are any rules, and maybe they do know, but they don't care that much about them.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of I can't think of the right word. It's not negative, but yeah, this definition definitely suggests that for the most part, being an outsider musician means you don't really have the same skills or the kind of qualities that make somebody insider, make somebody popular.
Yeah, I think it can mean that for sure, and it does in a lot of cases. But as we go through the list here, I've got one or two people who are technically proficient, and but might still be considered outsiders for one reason or another.
There are people also who are very intentionally outsider. They want to be there. They're trying their best to make music that does not fit inside the normal parameters. For various reasons, maybe sometimes they don't like the popularity and they want to be kind of more cult. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think we kind of have to delineate between, people who rebel against the making music machinery, and people who, just sort of maybe don't care or unaware, and don't really, aren't intentionally setting out to buck the system, because there's plenty of people in the mainstream who either genuinely or as part of their shtick, sort of pretend to be outsiders, but in reality, they all have major record contracts, major label contracts, and they, they're pretty much really on the inside, but they want to seem like they're not because they want to be cool.
Yeah, it's cool to be on the outside sometimes.
It is. Well, we might as well just. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just dive right into
Sure.
this.
We certainly have some people on our list that fit that description quite well.
Yeah, and I think I know we both have this band on our list, and I think when I think of outsider music, I instinctively go straight to the Residents.
Yeah. One of the early, far outside pop rock experimental groups.
Yeah, filmmakers, visual artists. They are the group is. They try to work anonymously. They've worked anonymously for years. They wear eyeball helmets to hide their identity and top hats and tails. But this band might fit into the art category too. We did a show on art rock. I think I don't know if we mentioned them in that show or not.
There's a good chance we did.
Yeah. But this is a band basically came out of Louisiana. Their driving force of the band came out of nowhere really, and sort of started off as sort of hippie, got to San Francisco and Ashbury and all the hippie stuff was happening, and they kind of decided to go another way.
Yeah.
And I have one of their songs called "Smelly Tongues," which I believe is on their great record, "Meet the Residents."
Yeah.
Employed a guitar player, one of my favorite guitar players, who didn't last very long, died really young, by the name of Snakefinger.
Yeah.
Was on a lot of their early recordings. But just a glorious, kind of music that you're not going to hear every day.
Yeah, and for the most part, their records never followed the same pattern.
That's right.
They tended to always be inventing or reinventing for each album, different angles. They were also part of, they associated with a record label called Ralph Records, I believe. Yep. And so other somewhat similar artists, although not necessarily sounding like the Residents, but just kind of in that same feel of outsiderness.
Yeah, and Ralph, of course, is one of the labels, the ultimate outsider label.
Yeah.
You get bands like Ronaldo and the Loaf and MX80 Sound and
no doubt.
Fred Frith, who we'll talk about in a little while.
I had a 2 LP Ralph Records compilation. That was kind of as far as I went. I do like MX80 Sound a lot. But there was solo Snakefinger stuff on there, and it was really good.
Yeah. I particularly like their commercial album, the Residents commercial album, which is 40 songs, all 1 minute long, and they're brilliant. It's just, you would not think you could pack that much into a 1 minute song, but a lot of them really, are just incredible arrangements for something that's 60 seconds long.
So that's where, as an outsider band, they defy the definition of being musically naive or untrained.
Right.
They clearly have some virtuosic qualities and ability to compose.
And I think the record sort of pokes fun at the commercial music world.
Yeah.
Used to be not so much anymore, but the 3 minute song the 2.5-minute song was kind of the coin of the realm for commercial music.
Yeah.
And so they kind of took that to the nth degree.
So if it's even shorter, it has more commercial potential.
That's right, exactly. Ipso facto.
We could sell a lot more songs if they're only a minute or less.
I'll do one more and then I'll let you jump in.
Sure.
This person wasn't necessarily a musician, although he sort of kind of was on the edge of all that. But there was a guy named Joe Meek.
Yeah, I know the name, but I'm not familiar.
Yeah. Well, he was an English record producer. He produced a song called Telstar,
Okay.
which was an instrumental hit back in the early 60s. Telstar 1 was a satellite that we launched up into the air, was the very first communication satellite, which we subsequently, about 6 months later, destroyed with a extra atmosphere nuclear test.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, they went to all the trouble of putting it up there. Then the U.S. government exploded a nuclear bomb and made it a worthless piece of junk floating around up there.
They didn't see that coming.
No, nobody saw that coming. But anyway, Joe Meek was one of the first producers to use the studio as an instrument.
Okay.
We'll talk about Brian Wilson in a little while, but he was really the first person to use a lot of reverb and sound on sound and doubling, electronic doubling, and a lot of. He built his own crazy little devices for his studio, but also struggled with mental illness. He was a closeted homosexual, and that sort of weighed, I think, heavily back in the 60s. Of course, in England, you could go to prison for that, or be chemically castrated like Alan Turing was. So it was not really a safe space for gay men. And in February 3rd of 1967, he killed his landlady and himself.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And so ended the career of Joe Meek. But he, definitely put his stamp on the English pop music scene.
So that's an interesting situation where he helped improve the quality of artists' recordings and approach to sound who weren't necessarily outsiders, but he himself was somewhat of an outsider.
Absolutely,
Yeah, tragic story. I did not know that history.
Yeah, there's. I'm trying to think of the. I'm blanking on the name. There, he's got a couple records out under his own name, and one is kind of a sort of a space age, very extremely weird record that I really love, and I should know the name of, but I don't. Can't think of it at the moment.
Well, that's okay.
But maybe it may come to me eventually. But anyway, worth exploring. You can find him on our Spotify playlist. You can find all of our choices that we're going to talk about today.
Sounds like something I would like to check out.
Yeah.
Well, I looked at your list, but now I can't remember if we both had this artist. Probably the first name that came to my mind was Jandek.
Yeah. I didn't have him on the
okay.
list, but
we shared a couple others, but Jandek, I honestly don't listen to. I may have sampled a little bit here and there. I've had some friends that fancied his music, but he's a true outsider in the sense that, for the most part, no one knows who he is. Sometimes he puts a face on his album covers, but intentionally has it obscured, so you can't really tell what they look like. And they've been making records for like 40 years, and I've never even come across a Jandek record.
Yeah.
But
I think it was Kurt Cobain who said that Jandek makes pretentious music that only pretentious people will like.
And to be honest, that's kind of what steers me away from it. I do find the idea of an artist like that intriguing, but didn't seem like something that was really up my alley. But it is interesting that they've released quite a few records and have this kind of cult following. And I think also, maybe people who apparently like Jandek's music are even a little unsure as to how much they like it or not.
They're not sure whether he's putting them on or,
Yeah. I mean, and there is something in that I find intriguing, if not admirable. It's kind of an artistic troll in a way. Like,
right.
Is this real? Is it not real?
Look what we can get people to buy.
But then at the same time, some people might be really moved by the music on these records.
Yeah.
So, that very much a cult figure of the outside land of music. Next on my list, somebody that I know we both have is Daniel Johnston.
Right.
Who, in the description you were reading, I find bears much resemblance to that, the definition of outsider. Someone who had a compulsion to make music, didn't really have the training, the skill, the vocal ability, but people fell in love with him because he was so pure. Mm-hmm. He was so honest and pure in his expression.
Yeah, he's been called one of a significant figure, an outsider, lo-fi and alternative music scenes, and frequently cited for his pure and childlike qualities. Once refused a big multi-album deal with Elektra Records because Metallica was on the record too, and he considered them to be demonic, which of course they are. But he was, yeah. And I was sad. I was sad to find out that he is no longer with us.
Yeah,
he died in 2019.
Yeah, well, he certainly suffered from mental illness.
No.
I don't know exactly what it was, but he had a lot of paranoia, delusions. Mm-hmm. I think one of the reasons he got is well known. Speaking of Kurt Cobain, he wore Daniel Johnston shirts in Nirvana photo shoots. But one thing that happened was he somehow got onto MTV in the late 80s during a music festival that MTV was covering, or maybe they had promoted, I can't recall. I think it was kind of like a South by Southwest type of a thing or something like that. And Daniel Johnston just showed up and started performing somewhere, and people kind of went, this guy's kind of awesome. And then, I don't know if it was exploitation or whatnot, the coverage he got on MTV, but he does apparently have an album from like 1983, but then the next one is a decade later. So yeah, he's pretty iconic for the outsider pop musician. But I can understand why people like it.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of really endearing qualities.
Yeah.
And yeah. Well, believe it or not, we're at our first break. That happened just in a blink, like it does.
It does.
But we're going to go away for a minute, and we'll be back with some low-pass filter after this. Hello, and welcome back to Low Pass Filter. Bandon Wayne there. Mateo Noche here. We're talking outsider music. And I have what I consider to be the ultimate insider outsider.
All right.
And that's this guy named Brian Wilson,
Yeah.
who we all know as a Beach Boy, and someone who, if you've seen the movie, he led a very troubled life, and obviously has dealt with mental illness and ingesting substances that weren't necessarily good for him, and really took himself out of the music business at the height of his fame, when he could have been cashing in, I guess, and making lots of money.
Yeah.
But basically went to bed for like 3 years or so, and made some incredible, enigmatic, just nutty music too. That has been called one of the geniuses of our time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you think about going from being, an American darling member of the Beach Boys, the whole group writing some of the most popular American music of the mid-'60s, the whole Southern California surfer image, then kind of artistically seeming to reach this kind of high level with Pet Sounds, which probably to some people was a departure that wasn't appreciated. Others kind of came along and went, wow, the concept here, the sonic quality, the harmonies, all this stuff. But then Brian Wilson starts to take his compositions and his concepts even further into outside lands, I guess.
Like the song I have, which is called Vegetables.
Yeah. And because of everything that happened with him, and that music didn't actually come to light initially.
Right.
The album that he had been working on got kind of stuffed, but then people that were really interested in that got
ironically, the album Smile, which is what we're talking about, did eventually get made. Technology caught up with what they had left of the record, and they were able to put it together in a really brilliant way.
Yeah.
They took what they thought was palatable enough for the public, and they made this record called Smiley Smile.
Smiley Smile, yeah.
And of course, it had their biggest hit ever, Good Vibrations, on it. But he labored in obscurity for years. I happen to know a person who produced 2 of his records that never saw the light of day. They were just too, I don't know what they were exactly. I have copies of them. They're not good, I guess it would be the way of putting it. And just somebody who basically put himself on the outside, I think, as opposed to being a natural outsider.
Yeah.
And has made something of a comeback. I was lucky enough to see the Pet Sounds tour up at the Van Duzer. It was a great show, but there are nights when they turn off his keyboards and they turn off his vocal mic because he just can't do it.
Yeah.
And they have Al Jardine was one of the Beach Boys was there. He was fantastic. I think Mike Love's nephew sings the high parts.
Okay.
When they do the Beach Boys stuff. But yeah, an insider, outsider,
Yeah.
and someone who in the studio, a lot like Joe Meek, really kind of took it out to the next level.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to drop one more,
Go for it.
And then we'll go to yours. Now, I was kind of on the fence about this because was he an outsider? Did he have mental illnesses? Not really, no. But he was someone who came from nowhere and really sort of created the modern reggae, really, and that's Lee Scratch Perry.
Yeah.
And he was someone who labored in obscurity for years and years. Of course, he was in a band called the Upsetters that got, was known in Jamaica. And I have the song I Am the Upsetter. But he really brought people like Bob Marley to the forefront with his production things, and went on to work with the Beastie Boys, the Clash, the Orb, and many others. But his early adaptation of remixing and studio effects and to create new instrumental and vocal versions was something that just nobody was doing at the time. And nobody really knew who he was. He started to get, after 20 years of working in the trenches, he finally started to get some recognition, I think in the 90s and into the O's. But talk about somebody who just sort of on the outside of a genre that was sort of started off on the outside itself.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Kind of maybe similar to someone like Sun Ra in the sense that their persona at some point kind of becomes very outsider. Maybe inventing a character, being not from this planet perhaps, or something along those lines. Lee Perry, I think he really embraced being kind of the space alien of Jamaican music, and pretty much inventing or pioneering the art of dub, which can be a subtle addition to a reggae flavor, or it can be this completely far out space groove with the echo and that kind of stuff. So I mean, persona-wise, he was very much an outsider. I don't even know if by the time he's being interviewed in the 90s, if you could even understand a lot of what he's talking about.
Right.
So, I think he's perfect on the list. I didn't include Sun Ra, but as it happens, I'm thinking while we're talking here, and like Sun Ra was definitely an outsider.
Oh yeah.
But he was somebody that was classically trained in
and if you're going to go jazz, you could talk about Ornette Coleman.
Those were guys intentionally trying to bust outside the lines. And find new territory. Sun Ra, though, for whatever reason, he didn't really go along with much conventional attitudes. Even during the civil rights era, I think he kind of just stayed on his own path. And then eventually he started talking about, not being from this planet. It might have just been kind of a shtick, but it really worked, and he definitely developed a style, if you will, of jazz playing that is very outside.
Well, little known fact was that he was also, and I think this is the term, but he was also involved in industrial music. That may not be the term, but music that's created for a certain purpose. Either for films, or he did this thing about, it was loosely based on the Batman craze in the 60s. And fairly conventional rock and roll at the time. But he did a number of records like that were,
his early stuff doesn't sound that far out.
Well, this is after, this is after he was doing this stuff. So he kind of had like a parallel career, because I think he probably needed to eat, and he maybe wasn't eating off of Saturn and, the other kinds of pieces that he was doing, So I think he also did some more, pragmatic sort of music gigs in order to, keep food on the table.
Probably, yeah. Very interesting character. Speaking of interesting characters, did we both have Mr. Beefheart
We did.
on our list? I believe so.
Yeah.
You had Dachau Blues. I put My Human Gets Me Blues.
Yep.
And he's kind of riding that line in a way, like, he was somewhat musically trained, but he would also play on instruments that he wasn't trained on, or compose on them at least. Like the album that we reference, he composed it all on a piano, which he did not know how to play.
He didn't let that stop him.
He was he a harmonica player or
Yeah.
a horn? He could play a horn maybe.
Yeah, and of course, famously, or at least for people who are watching us, as he was a Humboldt County resident.
He became,
Yeah, he lived in Trinidad for many years. A visual artist of some renown. He was a really great and interesting painter. And you would see him in Murphy's Market up in Trinidad, going in the vegetable aisle, going
Yeah.
up and down.
After a while, he couldn't get out and around, and his wife would shop for him. So,
Don Van Vliet
yeah.
is his actual name.
His earliest stuff, not as outside as Trout Mask Replica, the album we referenced, but still on the outskirts. I mean, he's doing kind of a psychedelic blues rock thing. He had a friendship with Frank Zappa for a period of time.
Made records with
which
him
I think
too.
fell out at some point, but
Like you do with Frank.
yeah. And Frank Zappa is kind of outsider too, but a very well trained. But he was more inside than Beefheart.
Right.
And I don't know if Beefheart wanted to be more on that level or not.
Hard to say.
Yeah, but a very eccentric.
Well, yeah, Beefheart frequently constructed myths about his life, and he was known to exercise almost dictatorial control over supporting musicians. He wasn't a lot of fun to be around a lot of the time, but he did, blues, free jazz, rock, avant-garde compositions with idiosyncratic rhythms, absurdist wordplay, a loud, gravelly voice, and claimed a wide vocal range, although I don't think he actually. Just like the piano, he didn't let the fact that he didn't have one stop him.
Yeah.
But well, as long as you're talking Captain Beefheart, I'm going to throw in Wildman Fisher.
Yeah, not familiar.
Another Zappa person. I don't know how you would say it. I don't want to say hanger-on, but kind of a hanger-on. And Zappa produced a couple of his records. And in fact, the one that everybody at least knew at one point was called An Evening with Wildman Fisher.
Yeah, not on my radar for some reason.
He is known as the godfather of outsider music.
Really?
That's what it says here.
Well, good for him.
He spent most of his life homeless and institutionalized, and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I mentioned the record that was produced by Frank Zappa. He was an opening act for the Byrds, Iron Butterfly, Bo Diddley, Solomon Burke, and got into trouble with Frank when he threw a bottle at Moon.
Wow.
So the song that I picked out was "I'm Sorry, Frank Zappa," which is kind of set to the Brenda Lee "I'm Sorry" tune, in which he apologizes for hucking a bottle at Moon, who I imagine was only a child at the time.
Young Moon unit.
So, but that was the end of it with Frank, and I think kind of rightly so. He probably just said, "Hey, you're messing with my kids.
Well, yeah.
You mess with me."
Yeah. That's you might be able to forgive, but not forget.
Right.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that artist. That I don't know, maybe I've heard of Wildman Fisher, but not really ringing a big bell. Man, let's just throw Moondog in real quick.
Okay.
Not to go too deep into it, kind of, not exactly like Sun Ra, but a jazz outsider, kind of a New York street kind of weirdo kind
Yeah,
of
he was
guy.
known as the Viking of 6th Avenue.
Okay, yeah.
Because he would dress up with a horned helmet and robes and a staff, and he would just sort of wander around, and a lot of people didn't even know he was a musician. He was
Right.
just that weird guy,
Yeah.
blind guy down the street.
Kind of someone I guess I've not necessarily intentionally, but avoided learning much about. I've just been listening to his music for some time. I think it may be his debut, that's self-titled. It's almost like somewhere in this kind of Ken Nordine, Dr. Seuss, Sun Ra kind of weird. I don't know how to explain it. But it's outside. It's on another level.
It is. And I'll just jump in with one more before we go to a break, and that's this guy named Gigi Allen.
It occurred to me to put Gigi on the list.
Yeah,
But then I went,
And I have the song "Bite It, You Scum."
Feel free to talk about Gigi.
Well,
Allen.
Gigi was an American punk rock musician, also a country musician. A lot of people don't know. Kind of patted himself out on Hank Williams. Just a very self-destructive person. He's known for his live performances, which featured transgressive acts, including self-mutilation, defecating on stage, assaulting audience members, which he was known for and got arrested for on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
And really, just now, this is one of those things where you have, Daniel Johnston, who was sort of a, cuddly, sort of lovable figure, and Gigi Allen, who was just, he had reasons why he was like he was. He was raised in an evangelical family. His father made them dig their graves in the basement and threatened to kill the entire family.
Oh, wow.
And he, obviously was pretty messed up by his upbringing.
Yeah.
He threatened to kill himself on Halloween, but either fortunately or unfortunately, he was in jail for most Halloweens.
Yeah.
So, but it's like that house of fire thing. You want to look away, but you can't. Automobile accident, and sort of.
By virtue of being kind of, disgusting or unsavory, you become curious and you kind of want to check it out, perhaps. His music career didn't start off completely outside, or at least not intentionally. He was trying to make, the best rock and roll music, and has played with people who could play, and I know some people that just purely like his music, especially his early stuff. But I think maybe not being able to handle rejection, or the fact that he just couldn't be, a conventionally popular artist. He leaned into the anger and the confrontation, and then kind of intentionally, being someone that if you went to see them perform, you had to be able to handle what you were going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, not a nice person, and
Didn't seem like.
I don't, and this is one of the reasons I put him on the list is because just because you're an outsider musician doesn't mean that you're either necessarily good or worthy of your attention. And I think he falls into the category, even though I've put some attention on him here, not really worthy of attention, because he was sort of mean and not very nice.
I know. Jerry Springer thought he was worthy of attention.
Right. He made a lot of those kind of shows. Got into fights and did all kinds of crazy stuff on that. So, but yeah,
we're doing what we didn't mean to do.
That's right. Sorry.
Too much of a spotlight for Gigi. but he's worth being on the list.
Yeah, he's definitely an outsider. Yeah. There, he fits the description. Yeah. Well, believe it or not, we're at our second break. How did that happen? It just seemed to zip right by.
So interesting.
It is.
So we get caught
There is no time in space or on low pass filter. So we're going to go away for a minute, and we're going to come right back with more low pass filter. Welcome back to Low Pass Filter. Mateo, Noche here, Bandon Wayne there. We're talking outsider music.
Do you like outsider music? Do you really like it?
Depends. Is my answer to that.
It depends.
Some of it is great, and some of it is like, yeah.
So that makes me think of a band I think is on both of our lists that I don't really enjoy.
Okay.
But there was a time in which seemingly I should be enjoying it because they were kind of the darlings of the 90s sort of hip outsider vibe. The Shags.
Ah, yes. The Shags.
Does anybody really enjoy the Shags?
I have one of their records. I think just because you have to own one. And like if you're gonna do a Halloween show, like you have to do their version of It's Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit, when I first discovered it, friends probably, the Shags, check it out, My Pal Foot
Yep.
was kind of maybe the hit. I liked it. I listened to it for a while.
Sometimes referred to as the lobotomized Von Trapp family.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, it came their debut record. Is that their only record? I'm not sure if they had a follow-up.
Yeah.
Came about because their father funded their ability to record. They were three sisters trying to play rock and roll music.
Yeah.
And so it's maybe a record that in some ways shouldn't have been made, but then it could be argued
there are a lot of those.
Yeah, but by the same token, I guess you could argue that it was fortunate that it was made, but it ended up with quite a legacy. Several decades of people going, this is some far out stuff. This is some cool stuff. Tributes to the band, other bands doing Shags songs. But, sadly, the sisters really, they weren't developed, let's just say. It was raw garage rock, I guess it could be called. But it created a...
Rock that should have stayed in the garage?
Yeah. But it created something. And it typified the idea of outsider music in some way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, again, they had some endearing qualities, but I don't think they were good.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that? Yeah. There's not a lot you can do. Okay. Well, here's a couple for you. Skip Spence.
Yeah.
Alexander. He didn't like to be known as Skip. He liked to be known as Alexander, which was his first name, but everybody called him Skip. But he was a Canadian. He's Canadian. He was a Canadian singer-songwriter, co-founder of Moby Grape. He played with guitar with them up until 1969. He released his only solo album, Or, which is, and then basically got out of the business.
Yeah.
He also played drums on the very first Jefferson Airplane record.
For some reason, I thought he had an association with the Airplane, but I knew he was in Moby Grape.
He was known as one of the brightest lights in psychedelia, but also had a career that was plagued by drug addiction, probably using to mask or self-medicate his mental health problems. And a biographer described him as a man who neither died young nor had a chance to find his way out.
Wow. Yeah.
But the record Or is seen by many as a masterpiece in a lot of ways. It is definitely out there.
That's a record that I would like to try to evaluate more, try to listen to more and appreciate it. But after quite some time of hearing reference to this record, not having had anyone play it for me, and I kind of, for a long time, was just like Skip Spence, or I don't know, everybody talks about it. And eventually I got a hold of a copy and put it on, and I kind of was underwhelmed at that point.
Yeah.
I felt like maybe it didn't match the level of reverence in my mind, the way it hit me. Not to say that it isn't a record worthy of that, but yeah, to me it didn't.
It's definitely uneven, and it was made under some fairly trying circumstances, but there's some nuggets in there.
Yeah. So you have Brian Wilson, you have Skip Spence, Rocky Erickson from the 13th Floor Elevators, Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac.
Yes.
These are people that I think it was a combination of drugs and some underlying mental disorder that converged to take them out of a momentum of being very talented, being part of great bands, and so not being outsider for a more it is somewhat of a natural reason, but I think the drug use, the psychedelia, the excesses of that liberated time of the late 60s just kind of took some of these people into a different mental place, and then sort of became outsiders to the scene. And for better or for worse, I mean, it sounds like for most of them it was a rough road.
Yeah. And I'll just throw in here Elliott Smith, who was very much kind of down the same road of alcohol abuse and the intersection of alcohol abuse and mental
depression,
health problems, depression.
Whatever led to his depression, could have been bipolar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I wouldn't have come up with him as an outsider. He was an indie rock darling. He within that sphere, he was pretty successful. But
I think the reason I put him on there is because I think he always felt like an outsider.
Yeah.
Whether he was or not, people did embrace him. He made some great records. But I think he always felt sort of like the alien in the room.
I agree with you. I mean, I think you hear it in his music.
Yeah.
It feels very alone and isolated. And sad. So yeah, it maybe like Kurt Cobain got huge and was unhappy in this world that he ended up in. He may have already been unhappy on some level to begin with, but Elliott Smith is kind of like more going it alone and just kind of, this solo singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
And a lot of his records are very starkly just guitar and his voice is really on top of everything. It's very clear. And I wouldn't have thought of him as an outsider, but now that you bring it up, I think about how I kind of tend to stay away from his music because it's so emotionally heavy.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to sit in that, you know. Maybe if I was going through that same...
Maybe you'd want to stay away from it even
well,
more.
Maybe, but it would...
You'd want to put on the shags.
Which one would cause me to do bad things first? The shags, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so that's interesting. That's, yeah. And he took his own, he took himself out.
Yeah.
Very tragic. His very final record, though, which I think was posthumous release.
Yes, it was.
From A Basement on a Hill.
Yeah.
Has so much more going on than a lot of his other stuff. It's almost like his Pet Sounds or Abbey Road or something like. And I think that's a much more uplifting record of his. Still got some heaviness in there, but a lot of his other stuff is just too emotionally hard to.
We'll throw out a couple more. We got
go for it.
Another 5 or 10 minutes.
I'm good on my list anyway. So, what else you got?
Well, I'll just mention a couple here. I had Vic Chestnut.
Yeah, I'm not really. I know of him.
Athens, GA dude. So he's in. He's had a couple records produced by Michael Stipe.
Okay.
Friends of the B-52s and all that. It was a big part of the music scene down there. He was paralyzed in a 1983 car accident.
Okay.
Partially paralyzed. He was in a wheelchair and he had limited use of his hands, but he sort of re-taught himself to play guitar and wrote some really good, haunting, funny, poignant records. I think it came to people's attention when a group of musicians got together and did a tribute record for him when he was going through his health problems.
Huh.
And a lot of famous musicians kicked in one of his songs and sort of put him on people's radars.
Yeah.
But at that time, he was not. I mean, he never was a big figure, but he, and remained, sort of a regional, if you could even call him that, somebody like a musician's musician, somebody that, people in the know knew about.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I knew the name at the record store, maybe sold the tribute album, maybe sold some of his stuff, I'm not sure. But.
Yeah, great record called About to Choke. I suggest for the listeners.
All right.
And watchers. And then, since you don't have anything else, I'm just going to throw in Fred Frith.
Yeah.
He is an outsider in the fact that not many people know who he is. He's an academic. He taught, music composition in various places. He was in the avant-garde rock band Henry Cow.
Henry Cow, yeah.
Also in Art Bears,
yes.
Skeleton Crew. But the reason I put him on the list is because he often in his career has played with homemade instruments.
Okay.
So, that included like hunks of wood with, strings nailed to them and a pickup glued on somewhere. He designed a bunch of sort of outsider, maybe that's not the word, but he just, weird, records that had things like egg beaters and paintbrushes and metal chains attached to it, and he would do like treated instruments where it would be a normal instrument, but then you'd like, tape it together with masking tape or do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he would do things like drop objects onto these instruments, like beans or hammers or anything like that. But if you've ever heard any of his compositions, I think you would feel like it was very outside music.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how much of an outsider he is, but I think his output is very outside.
I think that's fair to include in this discussion. You know, so we've talked about people maybe start out with a disability of some kind and end up trying to make music. Some people slip into, for whatever reason, you know, a different frame of mind at some point in their life, and their music changes because of that. And then maybe someone like Fred Frith is the kind of outsider who isn't necessarily doing it just to be cool, but they have kind of an obsessive compulsion to try things that are unconventional, try to express themselves outside of the normal toolkit that most people use, because maybe they've gotten bored with that, or they've used that tool to a point where they're just like, this isn't satisfying me anymore, I need to find something else.
They're trying to break new sonic territory. And that's not something that most musicians do. I think we all think of a combo of bass guitars, drums, maybe a keyboard player and a singer, and that's what we think of as music, or an orchestra, say, or a jazz ensemble, with the standard saxophones and trombones and stuff like that. But I think Fred Frith was trying to, and is, who's still active and still making records, trying to be outside with the sonic territory that he was breaking.
Perhaps just for his own satisfaction.
Totally, because he's obviously not getting rich off of selling his records. But I don't think Taylor Swift will be covering them anytime soon. But maybe she should.
He definitely is someone known to a certain kind of music lover that follows the kind of avant-garde and art rock, and I have certain friends who really enjoy him, yourself included. I think I had a friend expose me to him almost 30 years ago. He was getting into stuff like that. Never fully became my thing, but I dig it.
An acquired taste, perhaps.
Yeah, I like a lot of acquired taste stuff, but still sometimes gravitate more towards
the more trad,
the easily digestible stuff.
Yeah. As do we all. Well, any final thoughts on outsider music?
I think we all could see ourselves as outsiders sometimes, but some artists just really can't help themselves. They just, and they deserve a place.
Yeah.
They are expressing something that does connect with some people, and so they're valuable in that respect.
We've talked about on this show many times how there's no accounting for taste. And, there are people that like Kenny G, and there are people who like Fred Frith.
Yeah.
And I doubt I doubt there's a lot of intersection there, but it's theoretically possible.
You could find me listening to both of those sometimes.
Maybe at the same time.
Possibly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to just about do it for Low Pass Filter this time out. As always, you can find our Spotify playlists that are linked below. You can get a hold of us and let us know what you think about what's happening with the show. If you've got suggestions, if you have comments, you can go to lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. Be sure and like and subscribe to the Low Pass Filter channel.
Yes, please.
Hit the bell icon.
Yeah.
So you're notified whenever there's new content.
The compulsory words.
You got to say it. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it.
You can't be on YouTube if you don't say those things.
That's right. You will be drummed at. You will be the ultimate YouTube outsider if you don't say that stuff. But we'll see you next time on Low Pass Filter. Thanks for watching Low Pass Filter. hosts at lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified about future shows.